4.5 billion years ago, in 1996, Nintendo released a console that changed the course of history for Nintendo.
I sold my previous N64 when I couldn't afford presents last Christmas, and it left a hole in my soul that needed filling. So for £64, not even making that up, I got myself a broken N64, broken rumble pack, untested game, 2 controllers with floppies. I forgot what... oh, memory card. Let's see if we can get it all fixed. The N64 finally hit the UK on the 1st of March 1997 for £250. If you wanted games on release, like Mario 64 or Pilot Wings, they'd cost you £55 each. The same weekend, Sony slashed the PlayStation to £129 to try and lure kids' parents away from the N64, so 1 month later, Nintendo dropped the price of the console to just under £150. Bloody hell, that scared me. Although everyone else had moved to CDs for games, Nintendo stuck with cartridges to avoid piracy and to keep load times down. Great for Nintendo, impatient kids, and well, that's all really. CDs could store loads of stuff like recorded music, more textures and other content. CDs had a capacity of about 80 N64 cartridges, so developers had to cram everything into a few megabytes. But that didn't stop Rare, who were part of Nintendo's dream team, from going for it and coming out with nearly half of the top 10 N64 games of all time, like Perfect Dark, Donkey Kong 64, Diddy Kong Racing, and GoldenEye. This one was only listed as untested. I also got myself a flash cart so I can run diagnostics and play ROM hacks and backups of games I definitely own. I mean, I downloaded some of my ROMs over 25 years ago on dial-up, they're definitely mine now, right? All these stickers are shite. I'm gonna have to make my own one. What a waste of paper and sticky stuff. It comes with a micro SD card in case you're a noob, but nice touch, I guess. You can also transfer files to it over USB-C, which is nice and modern. It comes with an SD card loaded with stuff I don't want, didn't ask for, and will delete to avoid choice paralysis.
Ah, mamma mia.
Rumble pack. Again, sold as seen, untested, no refunds. That's eBay speak for, I found it in the sea, but I might get some money from an idiot on eBay. Let's see what's in the battery. Holy turquoise bogies, Batman, that's some corrosion right there. Let's start at the beginning and just see what happens when we try to use the console.
Power supply.
Power supply in. Plug in. And power! That was never going to work. It's not in very good condition. Might have to get a new shell for this old boy. Okay, power very much off. Power supply out. Oh yeah, release button. Power supply out. We'll take a look at that in a second. There's a lot of loose bits in this, hopefully just the shell. Even the power supply feels a bit on the loose side. Let's do some testing. The power supply helpfully shows what the 6 pins are for. There are 2 pins for 3.3 volts at 2.7 amps, a 12 volt pin and 3 ground pins. Let's see if there's 3.3 and 12 volts coming out. I'm not getting anything at all, so let's open it up by taking out these 2 screws. I've got a healthy fear of capacitors, so I'm just checking to see how much is left in the fat ones. Not much, probably because I accidentally shorted one by touching the probes together. Back of the finger test on the rest just means that I get a sharp zap through the skin rather than a pulse through any muscles. Not that there are many muscles in the hand. I'm guessing the issue here is the same as the last N64 video I did, where a tiny, awkwardly placed resistor fails, hidden under some silicone. Maybe it overheats? I don't know. It's right next to a voltage regulator which gets hot as part of its design. I guess the silicone is meant to protect nearby components from the heat, but fails? The resistor is located on a breakout board, which means with my low skill level, I'll need to remove from the main board to work on. It'll also make it easier to peel and scrape off the silicone. I don't technically need to unscrew the voltage regulator from the heatsink, but it might make life a little easier. There are 13 pins holding the breakout board in place, so I'm adding some flux, which will help spread the heat from the desoldering gun around the old solder to melt it easier. It looks like there's a couple of pins that were intentionally bent, which might make things a little trickier. But I was able to bend the pins using the tip of the desoldering gun in order to get to the solder and get it all sucked up. Just a little gentle test to see if they're all loose, and it feels like it is, but something rubbery is keeping it in place. Ah, the silicone. I'll just slice the lump in half and that should free it up. Trying to be careful that I don't cut any traces with a scalpel. And that's enough. It's free now! Although a few pins got bent on the way out, but a little TLC from the tweezers and they're all good. Here's the rest of the silicone. I'm trying to pull the bulk away with my fingernails, which works for the most part. The lower of these two resistors should read 1.5 kiloohms, and I would say 1.497 is close enough for any reasonable person. This is the resistor that usually fails, apparently. The higher one should read 220 ohms, and I would say 7 million ohms is approximately 32,000 times more than it should be. I can't be sure that this is the only issue on the power supply, but it's definitely one of them. I've got some spares, so gently, carefully, removing one from... and it's gone. Never going to see that again. Next one I'll just tip out. Found the other one. I'll put that back. Making sure that they're the right size. Looks good. Some flux to help get this little guy off. I'll just quickly heat up both sides of the resistor to remove it. It shouldn't take long. I'll keep swapping over to keep the heat on both sides and it will just come off when the solder on each side is melted. Oh, almost got stuck to that pad. And we're clear. Applying more flux to help the solder wick remove the last of the old solder. Here's the solder wick, absorbing that old solder. Lovely. And now the easy part. All I have to do here is put the new resistor in place and then add solder to one side to pin it down and then some onto the other side to finish the job. Great, that's in place. So now I just need to tack the less awkward side down. Get back there, you sneaky... There we go, and now the other side. And again, just to make sure it's secured. What you can see now is 30 minutes of sped up footage of me swearing and failing to keep the resistor in place as it kept coming away because I'm an idiot. I like to keep mistakes in my videos, but 30 minutes of mistakery is pretty long. With the new resistor in place, I better test it to make sure that it reads correctly, and that the other one still does. After all that heat and mistakery. Good, the 1.5k is still 1.5k. And the 220 is 220! Yay! So now to put the board back to from whence it came. Some flux to help the solder do its job. Heating the pin and the hole together, then introducing the solder. Solder, this is pin. Pin, this is solder. Ah, they're getting on well. I'm doing the outermost pins first so that I don't need to keep holding the loose board in place, and then I'm filling the holes in the middle to finish it off. That's them all done, so now just to clean out the old flux, including on this part that I should have done before I started reassembling, using some 0.1% impure alcohol and a brush. Not forgetting to reattach the mains connector to the board. It's impossible to put this all back in the wrong way round, so that's handy. And we're done. Now to test it. And in 3, 2, 1. Woohoo! We have power! But no controllers connected. So let's get some controllers connected.
Controllers!
Here's two original controllers with saggy knobs, and the grey one has its own additional issue. The grey one has a tear in the cable showing the internal wires. This isn't much of an issue, but it means there's less tension relief on the smaller wires, so it could fail quicker. Although there is some strain relief material in there, the fact that some of the wires have a little slack worries me. I could slide heat shrink wrap over it, but it'd still look like a bodge, so I think I'd rather lose some length and have a neat looking cable. Let's have a look at these saggy knobs. Pretty saggy, pretty saggy. But how does that affect games? This is just the menu. Imagine playing a game where you have to aim. About 6 weeks ago, I ordered some...
Oh my God, don't distract me. What the fuck, bro? Oh my God, don't distract me.
We don't even have a dog or a cat. Anyway, this is what just came, enough to do 4 controllers, 4 bowls, 4 knobs, and 4 sets of gears. Oh, and 4 sets of silicone button replacements for a Game Boy that I bought by accident. So like I said before, instead of polishing a turd, I'd rather remove the turd. It looks like this got worn over time as people with rumble packs tended to wrap the cables around like this. It's a bit grubby, so for my sanity, I'll do a primary clean and remove any stickiness from the cable as well. Removing the 7 main screws as well as 2 smaller screws within the expansion port. And taking out all the parts, including the silicone membranes and buttons, and forgetting that by this point I should have put gloves on. Ugh. 3 screws hold the joystick unit in place, so they're coming out too. Now time for a bath. Hello. Oh look, I've remembered gloves. While the buttons etc. are drying out, I'm going to clean any muck from the PCB. Clearly there's been some sweat or drink or dribble make its way through, so some rubbing alcohol on a cotton tip will take care of that. I don't usually clean the carbon contacts because if you do, you take away the carbon or graphite that's exposed from this composite material. What I found though is that gently rubbing a very soft, like 7B pencil over the contacts works like magic. How does muck even get here? Same thing goes for the silicone and carbon composite here, although I forgot to film the pencil rubbing part. The cable is hardwired to the PCB, so I'm making a note of the order of these 3 wires. I'm cutting where I'll still have enough unsheathed wire to be able to work. And now I'll just remove the foreskin. Removing the 3 wires. By the way, red is 3.3 volts, black is ground, and white is data. I'm using the solder sucker to release the 3 wires from the PCB. Lovely, comes right out. Now I'm preparing the new wires by twisting them, clearly in a rush as I'm not bothering with tinning them, and as such you can see some strands don't make it through. Here's some history. There was a company called Silicon Graphics who made top-end supercomputers for use in animation studios, and Rare even used their machines for pre-rendering sprites to make Donkey Kong Country. And Nintendo had been using their real-time rendering software since 1993 for their trade shows. Silicon Graphics came up with a CPU in around 1992 that was only $40 to produce and thought it'd be great for a games console CPU, but SGI didn't make consoles. So they knocked on Sega of America's door, who said, wow, let's get involved. But Sega of Japan overheard and said it was too complex, and plus they were already designing the overly complex Saturn. They knocked on Sony's door, who were drawing plans for their own Sega Saturn beating console after falling out with Nintendo. Okay, time to look at my knob. Now I do have another N64 repair video, but of course you've checked out all my previous videos, haven't you? So you know this. And in that video I go into a lot more detail about this process. But basically the original cup, thumbstick and gears, they all wear out and the mechanism becomes loose. So you can either replace these components, which keeps the controller as close to original parts as possible, or you can replace the whole enclosure. Apart from this design flaw, I do like the original design and how it uses optical encoders on the PCB to see how far the perforated wheel attached to the gears has moved when you move the stick. Oh yeah, the story. SGI then showed Nintendo their tech and Nintendo said, yeah, okay, that's going to be the N64. I'm paraphrasing, it was originally called Project Reality and then later on the Ultra 64, which I think sounds much better than N64 or Nintendo 64. Ultra or N? Come on. But apparently Konami had some sort of right over the use of the word Ultra, so Nintendo played it safe. probably had the same hungry copyright lawyers. One of the quirks of the N64 was blurry textures. This is because the texture cache was just 4 kilobytes, so the texture images were about 32 by 32 pixels. The PlayStation actually had a smaller texture cache, but PlayStation developers could just break large textures down into smaller chunks and reassemble them. But with a limited space on a cartridge, this wasn't practical. So generally, textures on the N64 were stretched and filtered, and coloured by vertex to break up repeating patterns. Later games to the console were able to work out some magic to overcome this, with some cartridges being as large as 64 megabytes, although the cost of those games reflected the cost of making such high-capacity cartridges. The limit on cartridge capacity caused trouble for Nintendo in some aspects. Square's Final Fantasy games were Nintendo exclusives, but Final Fantasy VII needed much more space, so they jumped ship to Sony. Back to the controllers. So the grey controller had a repaired stick, in the green one I put a cheap replacement from AliExpress, and the transparent one is a complete controller replacement also from AliExpress, which is a GameCube style stick, but for some reason a hexagonal threshold instead of octagonal. Yeah, fuck left and right, man.
Sorry, video's too long. See you in part 2. It's much better anyway.